Oh, thank you, Ian. Yeah, lovely. I'm pleased, and I think it's going to be so interesting. Myself with a beauty background, and I think,
Oh.
yeah. I'm iTech trained.
Right.
But it's just, yeah. But many years ago, I have to say.
Obviously in the UK, Sue.
No, not at all, Sandy. I trained at Madge Wallace.
Okay, here in Johannesburg. Good.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. One of the old colleges that started everything off with everybody. Yeah, that was.
Absolutely.
And I really enjoyed my career in the business. Most certainly, I had a couple of my own spas, and it was fun. It was lovely. It was a nice thing to do.
Wow. What were your spas called?
The firm, it were basically, they were slimming. I don't know if you've heard of them. It was the infrared and muscular impulse slimming machines, which my business partner looked after that side, and I did the beauty therapy side. So yeah, it worked. It worked.
Remember that name. That's an excellent name for what you were doing. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
We all needed it.
It was a franchise, if I remember correctly. It was a franchise, wasn't it?
That indeed it was. Yes, indeed. Yeah. Where were we? We were based in Cape Town. We were in Noordhoek. But yeah, I got to know a lot of the franchisees, obviously, through that. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Certain lengths of time, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Amanda, are we ready for me to give my address?
Yes, we are ready. You can address the members now. Go for it.
Super. Thank you so much. Morning, ladies. Good morning. Lovely to see you and hear from you. Welcome to our September IWC General Meeting. Unfortunately, yet again, not in Kelvin Grove. We have been in touch with them as your board, but unfortunately we are still on the 50 persons meeting thing. So we're not going to be able to go back as yet. There is no way that we can say, okay, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you are the 50 that come, when we've got nearly 400 members. So sadly, still not there, but fingers crossed at some stage we will be able to be back. And we on your board are working very hard to get an end of year Christmas party, as it were, that we normally have, if possible. Anyway, apart from welcoming you all and Sandy and Ian Fuhr, the founders of Sorbet, I would like to please just have a moment to explain my personal situation to you. Although I'm still very dedicated to being your president of the IWC Cape Town, 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was faced with a very difficult decision, as my best friend of 40 plus years in the UK is very ill with lung cancer, sadly. She doesn't have anyone to live with her, as her kids both have young families they have to look after and jobs, etc., etc. So with the best will in the world, they can't really be there for her all the time. So I made the momentous decision at the spur of the moment when a flight came up to fly over here, a repatriation flight. So here I am in the UK, looking after her, driving her here and there, 2 oncology appointments, shopping, just the normal things. And when she's well enough, take her out and do a nice little meal at the pub or something like that to just raise her spirits, you know what I mean? So members, please bear with me. You still have my full input as president. I've been speaking to the board all the last 2 or 3 weeks I've been here. So I'm very much still in the loop and will not possibly lose the IWC. So yeah, just to explain, because you've probably heard a couple of rumours where I am, what I'm doing. Anyway, that's enough for that. And on to Liliana, I think, who has a word to say to you now about next year. Thank you, ladies. Bye.
Thank you, Sue. I hope your friend comes along, or I hope you can give her the time she needs. Hello, everyone. As you know, this year as the past president, I'm the nomination secretary, which means I'm the manager of the process. I'm not choosing anything, I'm just managing the process according to the constitution and according to what you people do and nominate. I must say it's been very good. I had a lot of calls, I had nominations, but all that obviously is, I got it on emails and notes and whatever that everybody can see anytime you want. But I had more than 20 different calls and nominations and suggestions, which thank you very much for your support. Of those 23, 24, 3 of the ladies have suggested that the board, the 2020 board, should stay. So I have contact, obviously my job is to contact the different members of the existing board. Well, 2 of them definitely will not stay, they have told me. Another 3rd person is thinking about it, she will let me know. And a 4th person in the board, it will not stay in the position that she has at the moment, which means as it is, we got about 4 positions that are not going to happen, which means the existing board as it is not going to happen, which doesn't mean that some of the people of the existing board cannot stay, of course. The ones who stay, they already have told me, and the positions that have become vacant have been filled up with fantastic, exciting, and very capable people. So we are doing very well. Of course, the process is not finished. We got September. And so if anybody wants to come forward, propose themselves or propose someone, here I am. And as you know, I just go by the constitution of the IWC. So if more than one person has been nominated, more than one person accepts that nomination, then we'll have to go as usual to the vote, which will be done in the proper way. Obviously, we will have to have it audited, and that will follow if we have that situation. At present, seems to be very much unanimous, the nomination that I have. So all seems to be going very well. I know it's been a very unusual year. It's been very difficult, of course. And the board has to be very creative, think out of the box to keep us all together, communicating with each other. And it's been a fantastic job that has been done, and I thank this board for that. And as we're moving forward, we don't know exactly what is going to happen, and we're never going to go back. We're going to go forward. We are going to have to be very creative about going forward and about doing that. And I'm sure, look, the IWC has been going for more than 40 years. There is change. There is always change. Sometimes change is faster, sometimes it's slower. As I always say, we are a chain, and then every year is a link, and every link is different. And we think the people who've been managing, and I think we're going to have great people to manage it next year. If anyone feels that anything in the process should be changed, then obviously we're going to have to make a change to the constitution, in which case we have to inform everybody within 1 month of the next AGM. The date of the AGM have not given to me, but normally it's on the 4th week of October. So if anybody want to suggest a change to the constitution, please put it together, give it to a board, and then obviously we have to go to a certain process to have a change on the constitution. And I think that's all I have. You got my email, you got my cell phone number, so please contact me if you have any comment or want to decide anything. Thank you very much, and let's give space now. Kelly, who got some wonderful people to introduce.
Thank you, Shelley. Your turn.
Yes, I have indeed. Sandy and Ian, thank you so much. We do appreciate giving up your very valuable time to come and speak to us this morning. And I can see we've got at the moment 41 participants, and they're growing. So although we have load shedding, we're very happy that you've got some interest. So Ian, I'm not going to spend a lot of time giving your bios. Our bio, your bio, and Sandy's bio have been put on our Facebook page as well as on our IWC WhatsApp group, but I'm going to do a very quick intro. So ladies, here we go. Ian has been described as a serial entrepreneur. He has started and run successful businesses in various industries. His most recent venture, that's why we're here this morning, was his establishment of the national Sorbet chain of beauty salons, which currently has 225 franchise salons and has become the largest salon chain in Africa. That's quite achievement. Well done. He has also written 2 books. Sandy is a French qualified somatologist, and quite honestly, I don't know what a somatologist is. I would look that up. And
Okay.
run a chain of 16 international beauty salons and a beauty school for Regis International for many years. Sandy is past president of the South African Association of Health and Skincare Professionals. She was awarded the Regional Business Achiever Entrepreneur of the Year by Nedbank's Businesswomen Association. Wow, well done, Sandy. We look forward to hearing what you have said. As I said to you before, behind every successful man is a woman. So,
Right.
welcome. Very pleased to have you together.
Behind every successful woman is a man.
I was just going to say that. That's yeah. I have your support.
And I just recommend that all of our members put speaker view on. I'm going to mute myself now, but they put speaker view on so they can hear you guys speaking without any problems. And I'll be here if you need anything. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Amanda. So thank you so very much for inviting us to join you today. And yes, I know there's load shedding issues all over the country, never mind the rest of the environment we're living in. But I have to say, express a very warm thank you to our friend Carolyn Herrick. We had an amazing pleasure of meeting Carolyn and John as we boarded the Rovos Rail one year. It must be about 4 years ago, from Cape Town to Pretoria, and we spent the next 2 days having wonderful breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the drinks in between, getting to know each other, and we've stayed firm friends ever since then. So thanks so much, Carolyn, for inviting us to join you today. I'll start off by sharing with you a little bit about myself and my journey in the beauty industry. But I'll start at the beginning. So I'm a Cape Townian as well. So I grew up in Cape Town with 4 siblings and lived with a father who was in those days titled manic depressive, or as we know today, bipolar, which was quite interesting because in those days you didn't speak about things like that. So you kept it very in the home, and it was a very private thing that went on. So from a very, very young age, I learned to live in a world of being constantly aware of my surroundings and aware of human nuances, aware and alert of the changing world in an instant. When I was in grade 12, I won a typing prize. Of course, I took one of the easiest subjects in class because that was going to be, you know, the easy way through. I took typing and I was the best typist in my class. I won this book award. So I had to go and choose a book of my choice. And I chose a book on beauty. I had to take it back to my school. I gave it to my teacher and he said, "What are you doing? Are you going into pornography? This is absolutely shocking," because in the book was pictures of women lying having a massage. So their back was open or the leg was open. And I was quite devastated. I thought, pornography, what has that got to do with beauty? But at that stage, it just gives you an indication of how ignorant and how unknown the beauty industry was all those years ago. And up until that time, my sister was the one who was doing all of our grooming. I didn't even know what makeup was about and nails, and I just thought it would be an interesting sojourn into my education. So I joined the fledgling beauty industry in 1982. There were only in Cape Town 2 or 3 beauty salons at the time, for those of you who remember going back 30-something years. There wasn't much out there, but I was the fortunate one in my class to get a job. So I think I'm the only one around and who's been the diehard from my training school. And I received at that stage, it was a French qualification as a beauty therapist. Then after I started working in a salon, one of the salons, and I got to my 21st birthday, and my dad, being who he was, gave me the most wonderful birthday present, which was, "You're big enough, fat enough, and ugly enough now to look after yourself. Time to leave home," which is what I did. But that made me very, very quickly get married at an exceptionally young age. At the age of 23, I think that was very young, I got married to, you know, they say that you marry your father. Well, first time around, I think I did a very similar job. I married a man with quite low self-esteem and mild but impactful depression as well. And we were married for 15 years. but that really taught me how to be self-sufficient against all odds, and to pick up those opportunities and just go, well, what is it that we have to do, and let's make this happen. Often he was not working. He was in and out of work during those 15 years. So in those days, we could trade in a Coke bottle to get some cash, and we'd get the cash and buy milk. So there was a very interesting trading system going on in the home to try and get food dropped off at us. We borrowed a car. We used to walk and train and bus and do things like that, that in South Africa you would never do. But with it all comes the learnings of how to be humble. And as challenging as it always was, I wanted to be self-sufficient, and I didn't want to rely on other people. But this particular experience really made me learn that there are people out there who are willing to put out their hand and to assist. But for me, things started to improve on the work front. I think very much in thanks to a mentor that I had for many years during my 20s and early 30s. Her name was Yvonne Finch. She was the director of the company I was working for. And Yvonne was my strongest guide and role model through most of my early years of working. She was phenomenal. She still is the most incredible woman. If you can get her as a speaker, I think you would be really impressed. So she appointed me as a divisional director for the company called Regis, or Glenby. At the time it was Glenby, and then it became known as Regis. Many of you might know that company because it was around in the States and then into the UK before it even came into South Africa. So it was a massive, massive organization with hair and beauty. So I joined Glenby Regis. I worked as a manager and then became a divisional director. We grew. At the time we had 12 salons, and that was considered a lot before Sorbet came along, of course. So we had 12 salons, of which we then ended up with 16 before I left there. But I continued my studies. So at the age of 30, because I was appointed principal of a college under Glenby, I had to continue with a new qualification. So that qualification is known as Sedesco. It's a Swiss qualification, which is the most well-respected, best-known qualification in the beauty industry globally. So I joined a college, and I went to do my Sedesco qualification. Now, Sedesco's examination, they've got colleges all over the world, they've got members all over the world, and I was really privileged to achieve that qualification, which gave me an incredible stepping stone into the future of my business journey. What I learned at that stage of my life was just to say yes to opportunities. Whatever it was that came along, if I had no idea what to do, I just said yes and then found out how to go about doing it. Step one in strategizing, step one in troubleshooting, step one in pushing the help button on the computer was just say yes and then find out what to do. And that was something that I've tried to teach my children as well over the years, because it's a very important thing to do, because we often get grounded and stuck because we don't take the chance to do something and to make something of what it is that we have to go forward with. Then in 1996, I was given the opportunity to open my own business. And it was just the most interesting experience, because I went into a beauty salon in Claremont in Cape Town to inspect the salon, because I was part of a non-profit organization at the time. And this woman said to me, I've got this room. It's got 3 beds. It's got 3 chairs. It's got 3 trolleys. Do you know anybody who would like to make use of this? So I went home to my husband and I said to him, definitely, I've got to do this. I've got to take the chance, because education now had become in my blood. I was completely committed to uplifting other young people. So I sent her a 1-page letter proposal, which said, please may I borrow all your equipment? Please may I use your domestic worker to look after my baby who was newborn? Please, if you don't mind, may I use your towels? And also, if you don't mind, all of these things that I'm going to be using of yours, I'll give you 20% of my income. And she said yes. So I love yes people. So I went in there, first step into the door, and I waited for my first student, and I placed a tiny little advert in the newspaper, and the classifieds in the newspaper in those days, and I got my first student, who then became second, third, etc. So with no money, no what I thought opportunities ahead of me, it was just unbelievable that I had that step into that business at that particular time. I had to learn very quickly that there's huge generosity in people, and that it wasn't just, you know, I'd grown up with this father saying to me, no, and go out and do it on your own. And then I had to turn around and realize that there were people out there who would absolutely be there for me and be completely supportive. So I launched something different. So instead of going to do the same like everybody else in the beauty industry, so like I think it was Sue was saying that she studied beauty at Madge Wallace in Johannesburg. They used to do those traditional 1-year, 2-year, 3-year courses. I decided to do something really unique, and I researched this in the UK and came back with something quite different, where we took the full courses and qualifications and we broke it down into bite sizes, into what we call modules or units, which meant that doing things differently, we made such a difference. Because what this did in South Africa is it enabled the majority of the population to have the opportunity to study something. So if they wanted to just do nails or just do waxing or just do massage, they then could enter into the beauty industry without having to spend, already in those days, tens of thousands of rands just to get a single qualification. Because at that time, the industry was predominantly white, predominantly Afrikaans, predominantly elitist, prestigious. And if you didn't have a certain title, you weren't able to enter into beauty studies. So we've made a huge commitment to change the look of education in South Africa. So come 39 years old, I chose willingly to get divorced because I was big enough, fat enough, and ugly enough to look after myself now again. And at the time, my then-to-be ex-husband left South Africa. He had a yacht and he sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to the other side of the world and left me at home with the 2 kids, which was fine, but there was zero maintenance. So I was really motivated, stimulated, driven to get some sort of income in order to look after the lot of us. And I decided right then, I will not let this get me down. This is what I chose. This is where the direction I wanted to go in. So pick up this challenge and run with it. None of those decisions were conscious at the time, but just reflecting and looking back and tracking your life's journey. It's unbelievable how you realize that there are things that you do in your life and decisions that you make which take you in certain directions. It's so fascinating. So currently I'm a franchisor. I have 13 beauty training colleges, of which 10 are in South Africa, and 3 of them are in Africa. You might shudder when I say 2 are in Nigeria, true story, and 1 is in Namibia. But we're really doing exceptionally well in Nigeria. I must say that they've picked it up, and what they did is they came to South Africa to look for some valid education, which was awesome. So what I realized over the years as well, having been in the beauty industry since the outset, is that committing to an industry as a whole, committing to growing your staff, committing in my case to growing students, the business has come around by meaningful connections. It's about the people I've met along the way that have made my journey that much more meaningful and have taken it in the direction that I never imagined or believed that it would go in. But all through the years, I took many unpaid charitable roles as well. So it wasn't always about making money, It wasn't about making money. It wasn't about the bottom line. It was about doing things for other people. So the charitable roles that I took on made me realize that, you get in with one hand, but you're getting out on the other hand, incredible exposure. And that exposure led me to grow further and further in the beauty industry, which for about 18 years, I was very involved with the South African Association of Health and Skincare Professionals, where we looked after the beauty industry in South Africa alone. I did the presidency for 3 years, so I know the position you're in with an organization like this as well. Very interesting. Along the way, I was awarded, as mentioned, the Business Achievers Award for entrepreneurship with Nedbank, with the Business Women's Association as well. Now, I just want to take you back to when I was 30 and I decided I needed to do some extra qualifications. So I did the Sodexo qualification, if you recall. So this Sodexo qualification, it's an examination where the offices are based in Zurich, so it's Swiss-based. And this was something that was exceptionally aspirational in the beauty industry, to achieve this qualification and to be involved with Sodexo. I was then nominated to sit on the Sodexo board, which is, as I said, based out of Zurich. So we meet 4 times a year there. I sat on the board as the PR board member, and last year was elected as their president. It's a huge, huge position. In fact, it's the most prestigious position in the industry globally. How did I get there? I have no idea. It's just the craziest thing, because you just go about your day to day, your week to month to year, and you don't realize that in that process you're busy building a reputation, you're busy building a future, you're busy building some sort of opportunities for yourself. So sitting on the board of Sodexo International has been a massive learning experience. As I said, it's my first year in COVID-19, which has been really fascinating to be able to manage an office in Switzerland from a distance, but we're getting there. I just think that if I can do it, anybody can do it. If I could have put my head forward and put my feet down on the ground and aim for something and managed to achieve something like that, I think anybody, because I'm no different to anybody else. I'm the same normal person like every one of us around this meeting table today. And I just want all of you, no matter where you are and what stage of life you are, to know that whatever you want to achieve, you have the opportunity to achieve this. Now, sitting around my desk, meeting all these students that I've done over the years, I realized that we were getting all these students coming from Africa, which was fantastic. We had students enrolling into our colleges, but it made me identify that the education system in Africa was seriously lacking, and we know this. And it really led to huge problems in the beauty industry in Africa, where there was very interesting beauty treatments being done. So with all of this, I just made a decision then that I wanted to take education into Africa, which I think is quite a brave ask for a white woman to do, because when you're dealing with places like Nigeria, it's a very interesting experience to enter into a country like this. But so far with the 3 of us, with the 3 schools, it's been an incredible learning experience, and to see the appreciation of the students in countries like that, where they're realizing that they're getting some proper education to build an industry of their own, to have a viable business for themselves or a viable future where they can look after their own children, particularly this industry being majority female industry as well. Then I moved to Johannesburg in the last couple of years because I finally met and married the man of my dreams. I continue to work globally as well. One of the terrible things that I have to do as part of my job is I judge spas all over the world. So they send me to inspect spas for standards and quality. So I'm forced to go to terrible places like Seychelles, Mauritius, etc., to go and lie on a massage table for 8 hours and judge the training and the skills of the beauty therapists and the spa therapists in all these magnificent places in the world. So having said yes, I'll do it, how could I not say yes to judging these spas? But all I can say is that just be present, show up, take risks, make sure that you stay on trend with the changes in technologies. Who would have believed that we could be sitting around a table like this, presenting to so many people far away from us, and we're all learning and experiencing and growing from each other and being able to support one another. So last year in 2019, I'm so fortunate. I don't know why I did it, but I did it. I got all of our theory learning online the beginning of last year. So when COVID hit, we were ready. And it was like a breath of relief when we knew that we were ready to help our students, even though they couldn't come to the colleges to study their practical training. They could still go ahead with their theory. So what we did is we did this kind of thing where we did some practical demonstrations for our students, and we watched them and we observed them, but we didn't try and teach them anything new, because that would be seriously dangerous for the consumer if we try to teach them like this, how to do an eyebrow wax, for example. But what we also focus on is offering learning loans for our students, because 95% of our students are Black, underprivileged, previously disadvantaged students. So we have ways that we get funding, and we offer loans to our students to be able to undertake their qualifications. But I think probably the most important thing that I can wake up with every day is that I love what I do. I'm so fortunate that my work is my passion as well. It sounds so cliche, but loving what you do makes your working life that much easier. So who knows what lies ahead for me in the future, but I'm here, arms wide open to embrace it. I'm sure it's coming my way. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'd just like to say how very proud I am of my wife. She's just an amazing woman. And each time I hear that story, it re-inspires me. So it's just fantastic. Thank you so much, my darling. So I'd also like to talk about my journey now, going back. My lifelong entrepreneurial journey had led me into the beauty industry as well, and unexpectedly so. And people often ask me what it was like to be a man in a woman's world. It was cool, I can tell you for sure. It was great, it was fun, it was challenging, it was exciting, stimulating, sometimes terrifying, but at the end of the day, highly educational. I mean, before all of this, I thought that a Brazilian was a person who lived in Brazil, and that Hollywood was a place they made movies. Now I know that they're actually about bikini waxing, and I learned a lot about that too, because there's a lot of growth in that area. And so, so what happened was I discovered, for example, that we used to offer, to my surprise, a 3/4 leg wax. And I had no idea, it boggled the mind as to which quarter they left out. I used to wonder, about people. I used to have nightmares, in fact, wondering about people leaving our salons with hairy ankles. And that just didn't do it for me. But anyway, I learned and we got on with it. So, and before I get into the Sorbet story, I'd like to give you a little bit about my own early history. I went to a Jewish school for reasons unknown at the time. I was Jewish, of course, I still am Jewish. But my parents sent me there. And the thing about going to a Jewish school is that you don't meet anyone else who's not Jewish. You don't meet other people of different races and cultures and creeds. And so I just grew up in this very isolated bubble. And one of the things that happens when you're isolated, separated from other people, is that the teachers and the headmaster and the rabbis and people that are involved with the school have an opportunity to manipulate the minds a little bit. And so I started to believe that we, the Jews, were the chosen people of God. which is also cool. Nice to know that we got chosen. I'm not quite sure why or how, but that's how I grew up, believing that. And then after school, I went into the army and met some other people. I met some Afrikaans-speaking Christian males. And I thought that I had been chosen by God, but I can tell you for sure that they didn't agree with me. They at all. In fact, if you can excuse my language, one of my sergeants said that as far as he was concerned, the Jews were lower than shark shit. And that was, nearly 50 years ago now. And in all those 50 years, I've really tried to find something that could possibly be lower than shark shit. And quite frankly, I haven't been able to do that. So now, one day I'm chosen by God, next day I'm right at the bottom of the ocean. So that was a hell of a fall from grace. And one started to ask some very difficult questions, like, who's doing the choosing here? Because my sergeant told us that as far as he was concerned, they were the chosen people of God. And they were the ones who had been told to come down here and to South Africa to implement apartheid and all of those things. And it was justified and condoned by God. So I had to ask that question, who's doing the choosing? And why is he so confused? And then I realized quite simply that there was no such thing as a superior group or an inferior group or a chosen group or anything like that. We were all just different. And the sooner that we learn to accept and respect our differences, the better off our country and our world would be. And that was the message that I took with me from age of 17, I think I was at the time, and it's still with me now today. And it has been used through all my business adventures in understanding differences, race, gender, culture, etc., etc. So 1976, I started a company called Kmart, which was a copy of the Kmart in America. I didn't know much. I was 22 years old. I had no idea that there was a thing called a trademark. So I just went ahead and called it Kmart. We opened this large retail store. And then to make matters worse, I used their logo as well, which wasn't exactly the right thing to do, but we all learned, and I was young and naive and a bit stupid, so we carried on. And just, by the way, 12 years later, they took us to court and forced us to change our name, but that's another story altogether. So the important thing about Kmart, it was a retail store aimed predominantly at the black market. It was opened up in the center of Johannesburg, 1976, just a couple of weeks after the Soweto uprisings. And there I was, the lone white boy at 22 years old, with all these black staff, all older than me, mostly older than me, and entirely black customers. So I really was thrown in the deep end, coming out of my very isolated and privileged white environment. There I was, having to manage people that I didn't even begin to understand. So fortunately, I found myself a mentor, a guy by the name of Ralph Mamela, and he was one of my supervisors. And I realized that if I wanted to be able to manage people in this organization, I was going to have to learn about what was really happening in South Africa. Because he told me, as far as he was concerned, he was much more interested in freedom than he was in work. And I couldn't understand that at all at the beginning, but then I started to understand that what was happening outside of our business in the socio-political environment was impacting very heavily inside, because people were demotivated. He told me that every day after work they would be harassed by the police, and he could have been arrested for just about anything at any time. So it was a life of hell. And he said to me, he said, I really think that freedom must come first, and then we can worry about work. And so that changed my whole perspective on management and leadership. And I decided to go head first into understanding race relations, understanding the political environment, and understanding everything about what was going on in the country that I was living in, but completely unaware of. So he became my mentor, and he started taking me into Soweto. even in those volatile days. And I visited Shibbeans with him, and I went to his house, and I started to really understand the notion and the concept of white privilege. These were all the things that I did not have, in fact. I did not have to deal with the police. I did not have to deal with violence. I did not have my education ripped away from me. I did not have my citizenship ripped away from me. I did not have any of those things. And there I was, not even realizing how privileged and fortunate we were as white people in South Africa. And so I then, started to get more and more involved. I studied, I learned, not at university. Well, in fact, university, I very successfully dropped out of university in my second year, and then became a singer, but that's also another story. And then, so what happened then was I decided I needed to understand about apartheid in South Africa and what was really going on in the country. So I got my hands on every book and everything that I could possibly find. And I started getting involved with people. I was in the music business for a while, and I was dealing with expatriate musicians. You may have heard of a guy called Hugh Masekela. He was one of my recording artists in the company that I started out for expatriate South Africans, and Kaita Semenya and Leto Mbulu and people like that. And that's also for another day. But then I realized that I had to understand politics, race relations, and the socio-political environment if I was ever going to be able to run a successful business in South Africa. And that was my big focus. So from that time on, I really started to focus on culture, on people, on leadership. And then by the time I got to 1991, I became a race relations consultant to public companies. I went into companies like Marion Roberts, Nedbank, Firestone Tires, Budget Rent-A-Car, Anglo-American, and the likes, and was helping them with their racial polarization issues in their workplace and trying to get them to understand it and deal with it and hopefully overcome it. Sadly, the kind of work that I was doing then in 1990s and the early 90s, I'm still doing now in my new business called Hatch, and I'll speak a little bit about that just now. So in 2004, having sold the retail business, which by the way had become called Supermart, after Kmart had taken us to court, we were forced to change our name to Supermart, and then we sold it to Edcon in 2003, and they then changed the name again to Jetmart. So you might recognize the name Jetmart as part of the Jet group within Edcon. And then I had nothing to do. I was looking around, and all I had really was the blueprint of a culture that had worked for me in the South African context, and a culture that was specifically designed to deal with all these socio-political elements. So I had the culture and I needed a new business. Normally, you would try and find a new business and you would then start it up and then try and build a culture. But what I decided to do was I had the culture. All I needed was a business to implement it in. And just by chance, I happened to be lying on a massage table, not judging like Sandy, but actually having a massage. I never had that privilege. By the way, I used to beg her to take me along to carry her bags, but couldn't get it right. When she was doing all these wonderful judging things around the world. So I was lying on the massage table, and the beauty therapist said to me, well, why don't you look at the beauty industry? There's a huge gap in the market, she said. And I said, well, are you sure there's a market in the gap? And she said, yes, go and have a look. And I did, and I realized that there were no sort of chains or mass units of one brand of beauty salons. There was nothing like that. And I could not understand why. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity. Let's see if we can go and build a brand and then develop a national chain. That was the idea at the time. And so I decided to go out and buy a few independent salons. And in 2005, I was just about ready to launch these under the Sorbet brand. I had 6 stores that I bought with the money that I had received from the sale of the retail business. And so it was quite important at that stage to also understand that the beauty industry, as Sandy was saying, was largely white. I went to a launch of a product by one of our suppliers at the time, just before we actually launched Sorbet. And when I walked in there, I was quite surprised, actually, because I had grown up in just about everything I had ever done up until that time in my various business ventures. I was working largely with Black people. And I walked in there and it was just, just so white. And, the therapists were white, the store owners were white, the supplier staff were all white. The only Black people there were serving the food. And so I was really quite surprised by that. And I went up to one of the managers of this company and I said, where are the Black people? Was there like a transport problem, or was there like a taxi strike? Or what happened here? And she said, no, there are no Black beauty therapists, particularly in the skincare world. There were Black nail technicians, but there were no Black beauty therapists doing skincare and facials and things. And I said, why not? She said, well, because the product is a high-end product, and the consumers, they just prefer to have white therapists working on them. And I said, you can't be serious. No, she said, I am. I'm dead serious. And that particular night, and I remember it so well, I said to myself, we hadn't even launched our business yet, but I said to myself, if we ever get this business off the ground and build it into a meaningful chain of salons, we will change the face of the beauty industry. And if I look back, I think that's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of in terms of Sorbet, is that from virtually zero skincare therapists in the early days, it's now about 95% Black at Sorbet. So that was one of the important steps in my journey. Then, the first 4 years was really dark days we had. There wasn't much. I couldn't sell a franchise for love of money. I went to expos, franchising expos, to try and see if we could sell, beauty salon franchises, and these young women would come up to us and look at us with a bit of a skew eye and wonder what we were doing. An old man like this trying to sell beauty salon franchises. I think they were a bit nervous that maybe I was some sort of pervert that was going to whip them off to Thailand or something. And so they gave me a very wide berth, and I didn't get a single application from these expos. Everyone just ran away from me. Even the landlords were a little bit confused. They couldn't understand how, with a name like Sorbet, we wanted to open a beauty salon. They said, no, we've already got Milky Way and other ice cream parlors. We don't need any more Sorbet, thank you very much. So it took quite a long time for us to get the hang of the name. People say to me, what a great name, Sorbet. Well, I can tell you that Sorbet was not a great name for me in the beginning at all. It's not the name that builds a business. It's the business that builds the name. And so once we got the business going, then all of a sudden people were saying, Sorbet, what a great name, fantastic. And then it takes me back to when it was an ice cream store, and I cursed about why I had ever chosen that name. Nevertheless, we continued, and for about 4 years, we struggled to get the culture going. It was a difficult thing to get people to understand, because I was doing all the induction training myself. I did everything myself. For all, over the years, over 15 years, and over 3,000 people joined the Sorbet group. Every single one of them came through my induction training. And at that induction training, I was explaining to people not how to do treatments, but the culture of the organization, and getting them to understand really what is the purpose of work. That was always the first question that I asked. What is the purpose of work? And they would say to me, it's to make money, it's to feed my family, it's to survive, it's to grow, it's to learn. It's all about me, though. I want this, I want that. And I said to them, all of those answers are completely wrong. There's only one right answer when you ask what is the purpose of work, and that is to serve the needs and wants of people. And if you serve them well, then you'll get all the other things that you've been talking about the money and the growth and the learning and the experience. So service always comes before reward. And then if you serve well, the money will follow you. And that became a bit of a paradigm shift that we were able very slowly to inculcate into the minds of our staff over the years. And eventually, when in 2009, we started to sell franchises. So that was the philosophy. It was, you come to work to serve. And we try to explain to people that, in fact, you know, it's not a job that we do. We are not beauty therapists or nail technicians or hairdressers, whatever it was. We're actually here to touch people's lives. That became our purpose, our reason for being. We're here to touch people's lives in such a way that they feel good about themselves. That's why people come to beauty salons, to feel good. You know, and there's no other reason, really. Yes, they might relax and it might be a bit of me time and all those other subsidiary things, but at the end of the day, we were selling a feeling, not a product or a treatment, the feeling that people had when they left. And so we then really tried very, very hard to get our staff, we call them citizens because we had our own language. Our clients were guests, our staff were citizens, our company was a community, etc., just to differentiate ourselves. And we tried really hard to get people to understand that the attitude with which they served was very important. And so rather than seeing themselves as working on a job, they were really actually making people feel good about themselves. And how wonderful is that? What a great privilege to be able to do that on a daily basis, every day, between 6 and 8 people come into the salon and they leave feeling good and happy and powerful and confident and with raised self-esteem, etc., etc. And then slowly but surely the paradigm shifted. And as it did, so the service and the attitudes changed dramatically. Now, sometimes I walk into a supermarket and the cashiers look like they've all just returned from a funeral or something, and I just can't understand why they look so sad and demoralized. So I would go up to them and ask them and say, you know, what is it? What's the problem? They said, what do you mean, what's the problem? I say, are you happy? They said, of course I'm happy. And then I would say, well, if you're happy, tell your face. Let your face be happy also, because that's what we wanted to get through in Sorbet. We wanted to make sure that the attitudes became our competitive advantage. And when you look at why beauty salons have not really been able to create national franchise chains, and we became the biggest chain in Africa and probably one of the top 20 in the world, and there's not a single beauty salon franchise in the whole of the UK, and very interestingly. So why was it so difficult to create? I always wondered, why were there so few beauty salon chains around the world? And it became clear that it was about the level of consistency of the staffing and also the attitudes of the people, so that you could go into any sorbet throughout the country and hopefully get the same sort of service and similar attitudes. And that really became our competitive advantage at the end of the day and allowed us to grow to 225 stores before I left the business about 18 months ago. So around about 2010, there was a lady that came to see me. Her name was Tammy Lloyd. And she was trying to get a meeting with me to sell us some training services for our beauty therapists. And I kind of fairly successfully managed to avoid her until such time as she became so persistent that I eventually agreed to see her. And she came along and she was trying her best to sell us her training services. And I said, listen, I'm not really interested in your training services, but what I would like to do is I would like to open our own Sorbet beauty training college. And so she said, well, you're in luck because I know somebody, her name is Sandy Roy, and she lives in Cape Town. And she's coming up, you know, within the next couple of weeks to Joburg, and I can set up a meeting, which she eventually did. And that's how I met Sandy.
So, yeah, following on from that, we went for coffee with Ian one evening. It was a Sunday evening. The following day, I was an MC at a very, very large industry forum where we were fighting the Allied Health Professions Council for our position in the industry. They wanted to take massage away from beauty therapists, to stop allowing us from doing massage. Anyway, so I was the MC of this event, and I was on the stage, and I looked out and I saw Ian walking into the audience, and I wonder what he's doing here. But of course, it was very obvious what he was doing there. He was there because he was in the industry. But I had this little thought in the back of my mind, maybe there's a little bit more to this than meets the eye. I thought maybe there was a wider agenda.
But I must admit publicly on this webinar that she did catch my eye. And so Sorbet became a franchisee of Sandy's Beauty Therapy Institute, and we opened our first one in Rivonia, and then subsequently we opened another 3 in Randburg, one in Cape Town, one in Durban. So we had 4 franchises that we franchised from Sandy. So out of her 13 that she had, 4 of them were owned by Sorbet. The other thing that she helped us with was the SO Foundation, which is the Sorbet Empowering Women Foundation, which was aimed specifically at disadvantaged young ladies who were not able to afford beauty therapy training. And so we developed this foundation, and Sandy helped us a lot with that as well.
Yeah, it was incredible. What we did is we had these little bracelets beaded by the gogos in the townships, the Relate bracelets. I'm sure you all know those little Relate bracelets that you can get. And we had them for sale at the Sorbet Salons. And part of the income generated from the sale of those bracelets went into the SO Foundation. And from there, funding was provided for education for previously disadvantaged ladies. And that was just something very, very powerful and special, because we must have trained over 300-400 ladies to become nail technicians through the SO Foundation. So that was one of the most fantastic things that Sorbet did do. And then came 2014. Ian and I got married in 2014, which was almost 6 years ago. And we blended families, we blended life, and we're making it all work together going forward. But Ian's carried on with some really interesting work opportunities since then.
Right, so thank you very much. Again, I want to just say how proud I am of my wife. So I want to re-emphasize that. And then just quickly, to finish off the Sorbet story, we managed to grow. We built a culture that we believed really did work, which had a tremendous focus on service and attitude. Also, we built a culture that in which all the race groups had a sense of belonging, had a common purpose, and everyone was aligned to our reason for being, which was ultimately to touch people's lives. When I left Sorbet, we had 225 outlets. The group turnover in total had achieved 1 billion rand for the first time. We were doing approximately 400,000 treatments a month. We had about 180 franchisees. Many of them owned more than one store. And we had become, as I said, a very large beauty sort of power in Africa, per se. And then once I sold the business, beginning of 2019, I left. I sold the business to Brian Joffe's Long for Life listed business. And I moved out and I started a thing called the Hatch Institute, which is really a coaching, consulting type of company in all the areas of my interest over the years, people, in culture, in leadership, and in particular in race relations. And we have just now launched it about a year ago, and we're building up quite nicely. So we focus on all of these areas. We do personal development, we do leadership training, we do culture development. In fact, I've coined the phrase culture nearing, which means to build a culture in a diverse workforce that enables people to focus obsessively on customer service. Also, we call them culture-driven leaders, people who understand the additional requirements of leadership these days, which is to understand the socio-political environment and how to navigate that in your business, because it's such a critical area. We have a race relations course that we've just launched, which is essentially helping people to both understand and overcome racial bias, both in the workplace and personally. And so, which has become very popular in a short space of time. So we're working in all of these areas because I truly believe that it's, if we want South Africa to be successful as a country, we have to do our thing to uplift the people of this country, to uplift the education, to uplift the growth, to improve the equal opportunities for people, and to make sure that we have, in our businesses in particular, cultures in which people feel respected, they feel they have a sense of belonging. There is a common purpose towards the objectives of the company, and everybody can go out there and serve to the best of their ability. We have that obligation. It's a moral and a financial obligation to help this country work, even as the government struggles to get it right. We as companies and individuals must do whatever we can possibly do to make this a country that can work, and not to continue to perpetuate the inequalities that have been created. So with that, I would like to thank you all, and thank you for inviting us today. Much appreciated.
Fabulous, thank you. Are you guys open to taking any questions, if anyone has any?
Sure.
With pleasure, sure.
So if anyone has any questions, if they can please just put them in the chat box so that we can hear who may have any questions, and it just makes it easier than unmuting, because sometimes it gets a bit hectic. Well, if you feel comfortable, and I see a hand went up.
Thank you for your lovely comments on the chat already. That's beautiful.
Fabulous. Did
That's
someone want to say something? Oh, I see Shelley. You must unmute yourself, please, Shelley. There we go. Hi, Shelley. We can hear you now.
Hi. Ian, all the products that you're currently selling in the Click store, did you design them? Who actually made those products? I mean, are you behind them, Sandy?
A little bit. No, not really. Ian can answer that.
Fabulous. I must say they're beautiful. They're high quality, excellent, and I really enjoy using all of them. They're beautiful.
The Sorbet products. You're talking about the Sorbet products?
That are in Clicks. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit. Ian, do you want to take that question? You're on mute.
Right. So in 2011, I got approached by Clicks, and they said they could see, and they had identified that we were potentially going to be a national chain of beauty salons, and they wanted to get in early. And they then offered us the opportunity for them to develop a range of products under the Sorbet brand, which meant that they would get exclusivity of the product, and we could obviously sell the products as well in our stores. And that was a hugely successful collaboration, to the point that we actually formed a joint company with Clicks called Sorbet Brands, and that is still to this day a very powerful brand within Clicks. I think it's one of their top beauty brands at the moment in Clicks.
What happened is we had recipes formulated by professional cosmetic chemists, and they emulated some of the top products that we'd selected, and from there it's just been a huge success both in Clicks, more so in Clicks even, but in Clicks and Sorbet. It's been great.
Well done.
Thank you.
Amanda, I think Sue has a question.
I do. Hi. A semi-professional question, having been in the business. When one of my little stories in that business was that I was the area manager for a group of gyms. I don't know if you remember the Health Connection.
Yes.
We started off having beauty salons in the gyms, and you would have a membership to that salon along the lines of a gym membership. And I got in at the very bottom there and worked with the architects and as to how many rooms we would set up, the size of them, what the requirements were in each treatment room, etc., etc., etc. And then obviously from there, it was the case of taking on the therapists. And I had the same vision as you. I wanted them to be African therapists, not necessarily all African therapists, but I wanted a vast majority, because I'd also grown up in that culture of only white ladies could work in the beauty therapy, which was nonsense really, because many of the trainers in the gym in those days, now we were moving on, were African, and they did just as good a job as the white trainers in the gyms. And I thought, no, let's multicultural all this throughout the gym experience being beauty therapy. But I have to say, Ian, I had a little bit of a problem, so I probably could have done with the company you've got now. Getting through to these ladies, I would interview them, and I was saying, look, the point being, you're going to have to do shift work. So you would have to be prepared to be at the gym when they open in the mornings at, say, 5:30 some days. Other shifts, you'd have to stay till 10:30 at night when the gym closed. So you have to honestly cross your heart and promise me, if I offer you the job, that you will commit to doing those hours. And there was my problem. They wanted the job, so this is the whole thing that you're saying. It was a job. It was work. It was to bring money in. But very often, one of the managers for one of the gyms or spas within the gyms would ring me as the area manager and say, I've only got half of my complement of therapists. They just haven't turned up. They can't get here. Did you have that sort of problem? Did you come across that?
Well, we didn't have those kind of shifts. We did have shifts, but they didn't go much later than 7 o'clock in the evening. But we didn't really have a problem. But I think with anything like that, and not specifically that problem only, whenever you get those type of problems, or where there's a lack of commitment or a perceived lack of motivation or whatever it is that one is experiencing, it always needs to look, you need to look at the culture. Mm-hmm. You need to understand what's going on behind the scenes, how are they being treated in those gyms. Because if there is any sort of ill treatment or disrespect of any kind coming from a manager, I can guarantee you that you'll experience those kind of problems. So a lot of it stems from the working environment and how conducive it is for people to feel that sense of belonging and that sense of comfort, and that they can then commit to a common purpose rather than having to deal with each other. Because when there's problems within the workplace, the first person always, or the first group of people always to suffer are the customers, because they lose focus on the customers and start focusing on each other instead. And from there, it's invariably downhill.
Okay, I have another question from Karen.
Hi there. You mentioned just near the end of your conversation, Ian, that you had started a foundation. I wasn't sure, is it an NGO? And I was wondering how people might be able to support that.
Yes, it is in fact an NGO. It's a trust, it's a foundation, and it's not a profit-making entity at all. But since I've left, to be honest, I'm not exactly sure where that is at the moment and what's going on there. But I could certainly, if you were interested, we can put you in touch with the people at Sorbet, and they could help you, or they could direct you to the people that are running the SO Foundation.
Yes, the foundation is still in place, and we are still undertaking some of the courses, but it's not being supported the way it used to be, because the sales of the bracelets, etc., came down, and there's a massive need for it. We'd love to share their contact information with you if you'd like. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, if you share that with us, we can put it on Facebook, and we can in the newsletter as well, so that
Thank you
everyone
for your help, because any form of support for these ladies is hugely appreciated.
Thank you so much, Colin.
Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. No? Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, guys. I have one last question, but it doesn't have to do with Sorbet, because I'm in the music industry and I'm an opera singer. And I'm fascinated that you started an expat label with Hugh Masekela. I think that is fabulous. And I'm actually wondering if I've run into you at an event with Hugh before without knowing it.
Yeah, I was very involved in the music industry, but that was in the 80s, from roundabout.
When you still had black hair.
When I was still thin with black hair. Yeah.
I love
Nice to see Carolyn's face appear on the screen. Hi, Carolyn.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Good to see you.
And we see John in the background as well. Lovely to see you guys. This is the only way we can connect now, is by seeing each other on a screen.
I told John he had to listen behind the scenes because this is for ladies.
Great. Very good. Thank you
Okay,
so
thank
much,
you so
everybody,
much,
for
everybody.
having us.
Thank you for inspiring us today, really.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure, anytime.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thanks, guys.
Bye.